Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, Floyd Mayweather said an interesting thing that went around on my Facebook group and many other groups that I saw. Floyd Mayweather said that, a lot of people said this and that and the other. He goes, all of the guys that you think are extraordinary, I made look ordinary. Basically, he goes, you guys said Manny Pacquiao was extraordinary. I beat him. I made him look ordinary. You guys said that Canelo was extraordinary and I made him look ordinary. Now, there are asterisks around this point. I believe, and I know some of you have disagreed with me, especially about the Manny Pacquiao fight, that they think Manny Pacquiao won. A lot of the Manny Pacquiao fans. And I've always disputed that. I've always said, no, Mayweather won that fight. I thought he won clearly. Canelo, that was an easy win for Mayweather. I will say this, though. I don't think... And when he fought Canelo, it wasn't no fault of his own. Because obviously Canelo was too young at that point. He was a lot younger. Whereas Canelo has now developed into a very, very good fighter. A lot better than what he was when he was 23. So Mayweather can't fight Canelo now. He's 40. Mayweather's 44 years of age. 45. He's too old. But when Mayweather did fight him, I want you guys to remember this. When Mayweather did fight Canelo, right? How many people were saying that Canelo was going to beat Floyd Mayweather? And this is why I think Floyd Mayweather gets treated unfairly and he doesn't get his credit. Because before that fight, a lot of people were saying Canelo's going to beat Floyd Mayweather. A lot of people. I remember in UK, Johnny Nelson saying that Canelo's going to beat him. This is it. This is the fight that Mayweather takes his first L against Canelo Alvarez. And then Mayweather goes in there and completely dominates him and makes him look like he's not even on his level, like he's an amateur. And then everybody was like, oh, well, Canelo was green. Canelo was green. Canelo was this, that, and the other. Mayweather doesn't get his credit. Then Pacquiao. Everyone was like before the fight, oh, Pacquiao's going to beat Floyd Mayweather. He's going to do this, he's going to do that. Pacquiao was the guy that, everybody said wanted to fight Floyd because they think Pacquiao was the guy to beat him. I do think, for me, there's a question mark because I still don't know how Floyd would have gotten with the 2010, 2009 Manny Pacquiao. Because that Manny Pacquiao, for me, was one of the greatest fighters I've ever saw. And I just don't know how you could beat that Manny Pacquiao. Now, if there was anyone that could do it, it was Floyd, because Floyd had that kind of defensive skills and he was a defensive genius. So if there was anyone that was capable, it was Floyd. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see it when I feel Manny Pacquiao was at his best. And what I mean is Manny Pacquiao, even when he fought Floyd, was still a good fighter because as we've seen recently, he beat Keith Thurman. And that was years after fighting Floyd. But I don't believe everybody goes through a peak. And I believe Manny Pacquiao's ultimate peak was when he was fighting Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, Ricky Hatton. I believe that was his peak. And that was when I wanted to see him fight Mayweather. And unfortunately, we didn't get the fight at that time. So it's hard for me to judge because I believe that was the best version of Manny Pacquiao we've ever seen. And we didn't get to see Mayweather at that time. And even with Canelo, although he beat Canelo, for me, it wasn't the best version of Canelo. It was Canelo that was early on in his career. And by the way, that doesn't take away because this is what a lot of people do. A lot of people before the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight thought Mayweather would lose against Pacquiao. A lot of people before the Canelo-Mayweather fight thought Canelo would beat Mayweather. But yet Mayweather beat both of them. And then everybody's like me right now saying, well, it wasn't the best version of them. But before the fight, everybody was saying that they would beat him. So this is what I'm trying to say, that you can have your opinion. I've got my opinion. We can agree to, disagree. There's not a problem. I know there's going to be a lot of Manny Pacquiao fans that are going to hit me in the comment section and say, no, Imran, Pacquiao beat Floyd. Pacquiao beat Floyd. You're entitled to your opinion. I respect it. I hope you respect mine because we were entitled to our opinions. I do believe Mayweather won that fight. I watched that fight quite a few times. And I feel like Pacquiao missed a lot more than what he normally misses. It was a boring fight. A very boring fight. It wasn't a fight you know, it was hyped up to be something that it never really turned out to be. I remember Mike Tyson leaving the stadium saying, we waited 5 years for this. And he was almost disgusted with the fight. And I remember even Mike Tyson thought Mayweather won, by the way, because I remember after the fight, Mike Tyson said, yeah, no one can live with Mayweather right now. He's just too good. He goes, no one can live with him right now. When he beat Pacquiao. So even Mike Tyson thought, you know, Mayweather won the fight. And yeah, let's be honest, we all know who Mike Tyson was rooting for in that fight. So for me, I personally think that Floyd doesn't get the credit for those wins. I think the way he beat Canelo was like, he completely embarrassed Canelo. Let's be honest, that was a beatdown. If Floyd didn't have punch power, so he wasn't able to knock Canelo out, but he was. For me, that was a very, very once. I think that's probably one of the greatest wins. And what I mean by that, the way he dominated a guy that many people thought could beat him and just made it look like he didn't even deserve to be in the same ring with him. He didn't even belong there. It was almost so one-sided. Canelo, for me, just tried to be too cute. Maybe he should have put more pressure on him, become a pressure fighter, look to walk him down. But I just think he was mesmerized by Mayweather's speed, his movement. Mayweather was just too clever. Too clever. It was just too shrewd. Mayweather deserves a lot of credit for that win. Because, to be honest with you, I think with the Pacquiao fight, I think Mayweather was very defensive. Because I think he knew Pacquiao's speed could be a problem. So he literally tried to neutralize Pacquiao so Pacquiao couldn't land many punches. And it was quite clear to the judges that Pacquiao wasn't landing a lot. Whereas in the Canelo fight, he actually stand there and box with him because I think he realized Canelo's quite slow and flat-footed. So I think he realized he could stand in the pocket because he'd make Canelo miss. And he did. Even though Canelo's got quite fast hands, I think Mayweather's defense was so good that he just kept making Canelo miss. I saw Mayweather making him miss and then countering him with beautiful shots. It was quite clear to see. It was a beautiful performance by Floyd Mayweather. That was a beautiful performance. The Canelo fight, like I said, it was probably one of the best performances I've seen. Especially when it was a fight that people thought that Mayweather, this could be his first L. He's finally fighting somebody that's going to get him. He's finally fighting somebody that's going to beat him. And they couldn't. They couldn't beat him, you know, and he couldn't beat him. You know, Mayweather completely dominated that fight. Completely dominated that fight. That was a stellar performance and one of Mayweather's highlight performances. And listen, Pacquiao was a good performance in terms of winning the fight. It just wasn't... I just felt like Mayweather was so defensive in that Pacquiao fight. He was very, very defensive. And I had a feeling prior to that fight, I had a feeling Mayweather would fight like that because Mayweather wanted to win that fight so bad. He wanted to make sure he wins that fight. He didn't want to give Pacquiao any chance. Even when Pacquiao was hitting him, he wanted to make it known to the judges that, you know, he's hitting gloves, he's not hitting my face. Even though some of those shots were getting through when he was on the ropes. Mayweather was brilliant. Even the UK broadcaster, I think they had Mayweather winning that fight quite comfortably. I remember Froch was commentating and Jim Watt at the time, and they had Mayweather winning. There was quite a lot of people had Mayweather winning that fight. I would have loved to have seen a rematch just because I think, just to hope the fact that the rematch would have been more interesting and it would have been more exciting. But if we're honest with you, guys that weren't expected, like Maidana, for example, he wasn't expected to give Mayweather any challenge. And Mayweather actually struggled in that fight, especially the first fight, very close fight. Whereas Pacquiao and Canelo, who were expected to, people thought would beat him. A lot of people were picking Pacquiao to beat Mayweather. A lot of people were picking Canelo to beat Mayweather. And he beat him, you know? So you've got to give him credit. The guys that we thought were going to be the ones that beat Mayweather, he beat them. And he, for me, beat them soundly. You know, you have to give Mayweather credit because I know people look at hindsight and then say, oh, well, Canelo was too young and Canelo's a better fighter. But what were people saying before the Canelo fight? Before Floyd fought Canelo, what were people saying? People were saying Canelo's going to beat Mayweather. Many people were saying, I remember that time very fondly. There was many people before that fight, and it's probably some of you probably thought Canelo was going to beat Mayweather. And it didn't work out that way. And by the way, I'm a massive Canelo fan. I like Canelo. But he's a good fighter. Very good fighter. But, you know, I have to say on that day, And here's what makes Canelo special for me. Only Mayweather has really been able to dominate him. No other fighter, like I know people say, oh, he lost against Trout. No. Only Mayweather was able to dominate Canelo. Trout, Lara, all of those fights were close. No one dominated him like Mayweather. Even the Lara fight was very close. The Golovkin's fight were close. Mayweather was the only one that was able to separate himself from Canelo from young to when he got to his prime. You know, nobody's been able to do that. And that just shows how special Mayweather was. Because let's be honest, Canelo was fighting good fighters from after Mayweather. Before Mayweather, he's fighting decent names. I do think that fight probably came Canelo probably 2 or 3 years too early. I think if it had come 2 or 3 years after, when he was around 26, 27, I think it would have been more of a challenge to Mayweather. Not to say he would have beat Mayweather, but it would have been more of a challenge. But unfortunately, Mayweather was at the point of his career where he was kind of going on a downward spiral after the Canelo fight, because Mayweather was 36 years of age when he fought Canelo. So he was only going to go downwards from then on, whereas Canelo was going to come more to his prime. See, Canelo learned from that fight, and he matured, and he became better. He became better, and he to me, you know, he went on to, and now he's an all-time great. You know, who would have thought after Canelo taking that loss that Canelo would go on to become an all-time great? Because when Pacquiao fought Mayweather, he was already an all-time great. But when Canelo fought Mayweather, Canelo hadn't done as much. He'd still done, you know, a lot, but he hadn't achieved that much. Whereas now, look at Canelo, he's an all-time great. He's already a Hall of Famer. Like, he's Hall of Famer in the sense he's going to be a Hall of Famer, without question. He's a great already, and he's still in the prime of his years. That's how much he's gone on to achieve. But that's hard work, dedication. He didn't let that defeat get to him. He improved and got better, and now look where he's at. He's the best fighter in the world. So I think that just shows for any fighter out there, a loss doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. Canelo's a great example. Canelo's got a loss, but you know, Canelo fought back, and you know, he ended up, look where he's at now. So yeah, that's my take. I think Floyd's right that he did beat those guys that we expected to potentially beat him, you know. So you got to give Mayweather credit. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to know your opinion about this. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.